You have to have name and date of the election on the ballot. That's required by law. And I'm pointing you, and on your handouts that I gave you, all of this is documented for you to go back and look at. You have to have the voting squares, you have to have instructions, you have to have all the candidates' names. That's a ballot. But when we got our election results, I didn't believe them. Something's wrong, it's simple, let's fix it. Let's do a recount. This is easy, something happened. And so in Texas, for electronic voting, you have two kinds of ballots that happen. You have the paper absentee, and then you have the electronic. When our race, about 4,000 votes were cast electronically and about 500 were paper. Well, guess what the paper results did? The paper ballot said it was an exact tie, 240 to 240. It was a little city council race. It wasn't big numbers. It was an exact tie. The 2-to-1 came into play with the electronic voting. So look at the paper ballot. This is an example of one of the paper ballots. You see a serial number, you see all the candidates' names, my name, my opponent, you see boxes which are required by law, the name and date of the election, check, 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 it's an official legal ballot. What's interesting, the electronic ballots where the problem occurred. And I'm just going to jump to the end of the movie, many of you already know this. In Texas, you're allowed to do what's called a ballot image recount. So electronic votes, you can do two kinds of recounts. You can just run that program again. Well, spare me. That's not the smartest thing to do because you're going to get the same number. But you can also do what's called a ballot image recount, manual recount. When we got to Travis County, Dana Debevoise, the county clerk, said, Ms. Pressley, we can't give you a ballot image. We can't give you what's required by law. We can give you something else, and I'll show you what that is. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay. So I'm going to go over, when I got up the next morning and licked my wounds because I had not won that election, and though I know I won it, but officially we did not with what was reported, I started reading the election code from top to bottom, and it is long. There's hundreds of chapters in the election code, and I read it for one specific reason that I was looking for. What are the documents that have to be backed up for electronic voting? Texas, we're red state, Republican, we're pretty anal retentive. We actually wrote out exactly the backup record. So it's amazing what our code has. And so these are three things, and you can see the chapters are all different, they're all over the place. So this is why I had to read word by word. And so I looked at where the backup records are documented. There's three things you have to have for electronic voting. First thing is you have to have a computer to add up all those cards, the vote tabulation, all right? And then you have to have precinct returns. Judges, election judges, are supposed to print these tapes that document how the voters at that location voted and how much for each candidate. And there's three places in the election code that this is documented, all right? And judges have to sign them. It's a misdemeanor to not turn the tapes in. Also, there's this thing called ballot images, and candidates have known this for about, 13 years, and they didn't know what to do with it. But this ballot image storage, Chapter 128, Chapter 213, and Chapter 81 of the Administrative Code talks about ballot images. Well, what's a ballot? Serial number, boxes, all the candidates' names, name and date of the election, instructions, that's a ballot. That's what the law says. So what's an image? Image is a picture, okay? You're supposed to have a ballot image. When you see the ballot when you vote, it shows you an image. It's actually a bitmap file from a computer science standpoint. And so it shows you the ballot image that's unvoted. It's supposed to save that image for a recount. Candidates have known this for 13 years, and they've known they've not been able to get a legal recount in the state. And no one's done anything about it till now. It shows you the image, it's supposed to save it. Okay, let's talk about the tapes a little bit. Three places in the election code, Chapter 66, Chapter 65, document, and there's three sections of Chapter 66 that say for envelope 1, envelope 2, and 3 that you return to the county, you got to have the precinct returns. Okay, actually, even in the judge's handbook from the Secretary of State's own office talks about DREs, direct recording electronic voting machines, contents of envelope 1, Chapter 66, results tape. Results tape, results tape. You have to return those tapes. And the reason you do is in case something goes wrong with the equipment. All right, it gets corrupted or it gets damaged on the way to the county. The judges have that backup. That's literally a paper backup record, okay? And here's an example of one for people who've not been judges. The Hart InterCivic machine will print out a long tape, and this was back in 2012 when for U.S. Senate, Dewhurst and Cruz were running against each other, and you can see the number of votes for each candidate. That's a results tape. That's a precinct return required by Chapter 66 of the Election Code, and Chapter 65 says judges sign it and return it, and it's a misdemeanor if you don't. Travis County, in my election, told them not to print the tape. This is the judge's envelope, and it says, do not print the tally in caps, number 7. So, out of the 3 records, one's missing. All right, so we don't have in my election that backup record. Yes, ma'am.
What did you learn was their justification?
I'm going to get there. Good question. We're going to get there. Suppose we asked the county why they didn't print this tape. And they said, well, we got a waiver to law from a bureaucrat in the Secretary of State's office. His name is Keith Ingram.
Ooh.
He sent a letter out saying, and actually this was for the general election, they never got a waiver for the runoff. I was in a runoff, okay? So this is the general election waiver, and it says, rather than printing the complete tally tape, print only the access code report. And judges know the access code report is just the number of voters that voted, not the tallying up of the different, how the different voters, who got how many in each candidate, right? So this was the waiver letter. And notice in here, it says, don't worry, don't print the tape. It just takes too long because it's a countywide polling location in Travis County. Ballot images remain on the machines for recounts. Well, they're telling people it's there, but it's not. When you start asking questions, it's not there, right? So here's the waiver letter. We actually had the county clerk.
I want to break in.
Okay, yes.
It's very important what his rationale was.
His rationale was
Countywide election precincts. And I want to make sure
That's
people
right.
understand what that is.
to avoid delays associated with the printing at countywide precinct locations.
Okay, tell them what countywide
All right.
precinct locations.
Countywide is you can vote anywhere in the county. Harris County is precinct still, and they are fighting not going to countywide. Y'all will never go to countywide because Alan Vera doesn't want to do it. Okay, and Stan Standard agrees. So y'all are safe from countywide. But Galveston County is countywide. So you vote in any place.
Right.
You can vote in any precinct. You work in one precinct and you live in another, you can vote in that one you work in.
Fort Bend has that too.
Yeah.
Fort Bend is countywide also. That's right. And so those countywide locations are getting these waivers across the state. So they're
That's the way early voting is done as well.
and early voting, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. So early voting is like countywide. Early voting is the most corrupt thing there is. That's where it all happens.
Well, having the countywide voting allows for more cheating.
And it does because you lose
Yes.
2 things. You lose precinct accountability
Yes.
of the people in your neighborhood,
Yes.
and you also lose this tape.
Yes.
All right, but I'll tell you what. There's some counties doing countywide that are printing tapes, and I'm going to show you that.
Are there any controls to make sure people aren't going to just in multiple voting?
Not really. Not really. Yeah.
Well, they say there is.
Well, they could have different IDs, and they're the same person. But if you were one person and you had multiple IDs, you couldn't come back to the same place
No, but I'm
because
saying
people
if
have
I
accountability.
went to one station and they take my ID, is there any communication between that station
Yes.
and the other station?
There is
So
now.
It would say that.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah,
Yes.
if you're claiming to be that one person each
Yeah.
time, but if you're claiming to be a different
But I could
person,
go in and say I was my sister.
Yeah.
you got
If
it.
I had her ID.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's why the precinct voting is more secure because you have accountability.
Yes.
Yeah, people see you. Oh, weren't you here 20 minutes ago?
Right.
That was my
Yeah.
twin sister.
That was my twin sister. Yeah, we all have twins. We all have twins. Okay, so we had the county clerk. So here's the issue. Can the Secretary of State, their office, can they waive law? Isn't that an interesting question? Well, I know. Can the Department of Transportation head waive law? Can they say, don't worry, you can go 90 on, 290 up there?
I wish they would.
I wish they would. Some of us, yeah. So how can a bureaucrat waive law? Okay, that was our question in our lawsuit. So we put the county clerk on the witness stand. This was at a hearing. And my lawyer's really good. He goes, why are you not following the law? And she says, well, that's not the final law. What? And my lawyer asked her, well, what's the final law? She said, this is Dana Debevoise, the county clerk in Travis County. She said, there's additional instructive directives from the Secretary of State's office that says we don't follow that law. We do something else. Lawyer's really good. He said, do you think the Secretary of State can tell you not to follow state law? She said, yes, they can. Okay, absolutely. To have the county clerk state on the witness stand that the Secretary of State's office, a bureaucrat there, can tell her to not follow state law, that's shocking. Okay? We don't agree. We don't agree that that's allowed. Okay? All right, so those are the tapes. The tapes are not ballot image, and this is my favorite topic because this has been an issue for 13 years and candidates have not been able to deal with this or known how to deal with it. So again, we go to the statute. So let's read what the legislature intended. So in Chapter 128 of the Election Code, it talks about computerized voting systems. And then this came into play, the statute, in 1997, and it's never been amended since then, as it first came into play in 97. And it documents the standards for computerized voting that are about to hit the scene in 2001. Interesting, right? 97, that was before the 2000 Bush race. Those machines were on deck. Those were on deck, okay? So, 97, the law gets passed that you have to have a main computer to coordinate ballot presentation, vote selection. Well, think of ballot presentation. You got to see the ballot when you vote. All right, we see it. All right, vote selection is a little wheel. And here's the words, ballot image storage. This ballot is the same as this ballot. Sure is. You got to store that image. And result tabulation. They're two different things. This says you got to have a ballot that has a serial number because the Constitution requires it. And no one can waive the Constitution, can they?
Secretary of State.
They can't. They cannot do it. This is in our lawsuit. Cannot do it. All right?
Cannot do it legally.
All right. Then we go to the Secretary of State's own website. And they define ballot image. Okay? This is the current Secretary of State's website. It's been here for several years. Ballot image, the ballot as it appears on the direct recording electronic voting system. Well, that's what I see when I vote. It's a ballot. Check, check, check boxes, all the candidates and date election, all of it. Even the Secretary of State's office defines what a ballot image is. All right? Travis County's website says the equipment captures an image of each ballot cast. They're promising it to you all day long until you ask. Until you put up or shut up, right?
Sounds like Dan Hubert.
County. And remember, the Secretary of State's office even said they remain. Ballot images remain. But when we got to the recount, Dana said, we can't give you a ballot image, but we can give you something else. Don't worry, Miss Pressley. It's called a cast vote record.
Can't because they weren't allowed to, or count because they
We'll
didn't
get there.
have it?
Let me get there. Let me get there. So this is in the recount, which is what we were doing. You print images of ballots cast. Again, the recount code. You've got it left and right, over and over. Ballot, 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 ballot. Dana says we can't produce it, but we can give you something else called the cast vote record. And I want to show you what this looks like. And candidates have been getting these things for 13 years. It's not a ballot. Do you see a serial number on this piece of paper?
No,
Do you even see a date of the election?
no,
December 16, 2004. Where's the date? Where'd this come from?
it's not.
I was in the election. Where's my name?
It's not.
It's not a ballot. It's not an image of a ballot. It's not even an image file. It's a data structure. Those are people in here who understand computer science. It's a data structure. It's 3 or 4 steps, actually 4 or 5 steps past the voter. It's down at the main counting computer where the stuff is being added up. That's where this was printed from.
Yeah,
Did they
another
tell
one.
you why your name wasn't on here?
Because this is supposed to be how the voter voted. Okay, and my name's not on it. Okay, and I'll tell you one thing, Kathy, it's a great question because in our appeals court, in our oral argument, Judge Melissa Goodwin asked the question when she was looking at it. She asked the opposing side, how do I know Miss Pressley was even on the ballot? Okay? This is not a ballot, and you're not allowed to count anything but official ballots in the state of Texas. And official ballots have to have a serial number because you have to trace them. This came from a PDF file that was just like an Adobe Acrobat where you could just slip one in after another with no traceability.
All right, I want to make sure we're clear on this. This is very important.
Yes.
This is a printout from the data, a database where they recorded what the votes are. That could have been manipulated and corrupted if in fact, the computer is doing the corrupting.
That's right.
So it's just printing out what they've already
What the
corrupted.
computer said we voted.
There's
That's right.
no independent check
That's right,
of what
Tom.
has been cast against that corrupted database.
That's right.
Or potentially corrupted.
It's not a recount.
Yeah, and so it's not a recount. And so if you print out all these pieces of paper and you add them up properly, it's going to be exactly what that database says it is. Which
Exactly.
is, of course, no check at all.
That's right. And the code, and I keep going back, I'm an engineer, so engineers work off of specs, so I like work instructions. The code is a work instruction for the county. You're supposed to recount what was originally cast, not a copy of something 4 or 5 steps down the road. And Melissa Goodwin, the appeals court justice, had the best question when she said, how do I know Miss Pressley was even on the ballot to that voter? Okay? It's a data structure printed 1 per page. All right? Yeah. This is the heart of our lawsuit. So when we couldn't get a legal ballot image, we said, stop the presses, we want to file a lawsuit, because now, county, you're counting something that's not a ballot. I don't know where these came from. There's no date on it. There's no sequential serial number. Where did these come from? And so basically, at the recount, they should have recanvassed the election to be a tie, because the only real ballots are the paper ones. Yeah, and candidates have known this and didn't know what to do. We said, stop, we're going to file a lawsuit, and we did. This is the first lawsuit in the state of Texas on this. Okay. Having been an engineer for 17 years, I have 4 U.S. patents, and I know how to read patents. So we looked up the Hart InterCivic patents. To your question, can they do it? The patents say yes. The patents say, this is a Hart patent given in 2003. It was filed, I think, in 2000. And the date of there's on here somewhere. Yeah, filed 2001. And it says, an exact copy of the cast ballot image is moved to the memory. It says it can do it. So Travis County, where is it? If they had to produce the real ballot image that's probably on the equipment, we would have shown I won the election.
It's in the memory.
It's in the memory.
When you say image, do you mean like a screenshot of the actual
Yes.
screen?
Yes, a bitmap.
A screenshot.
A
of the
screenshot
ballot.
of what you voted.
Every ballot.
When you decided who you were going to vote for, it was supposed to save it. And I'll tell you what, there's other patents on this equipment, and this is how they calculate the data structure. They take a bitmap of the unvoted ballot and a bitmap of the voted ballot, and they subtract them, and they get the data structure that goes on the card that goes to the county. But that equipment, moved to the memory, has it on there. It's supposed to.
Yeah, this is incredibly vital that this woman that did this hit piece on you, of course, completely missed, right? Is that you've got to have, when you're doing a check, you have to have 2 independent things that you can compare.
That's
and
right.
the ballot image is that independent thing to compare against the database, right?
That's right.
And if you are creating little pieces of paper out of the database, you have no independent check.
That's
The
right.
whole point
That's-
of your lawsuit, right?
that's right.
And that's the whole, the unbelievably bad fact that we're not following this law. That's why it's wrong, is there is no check whatsoever, and they can steal anything they want.
That's right.
As long
You
as
got
they don't
it.
have those ballot images.
You got it. So there's no tape and there's no image. Those 3 records, 2 are missing to document. So now we just have to trust what the computer said we voted. Just trust us, right? No way. We were supposed to have backup records and we don't have them. Yes, sir.
Am I reading right? That patent calls for storing 3 copies.
Yes, sir. You got it. There's supposed to be 3 copies of that ballot image. That's right. Yeah. I'd be happy with 1. Okay. Even in and this gets worse, Tom, even in the Secretary of State's own administrative code, because you have the Texas Election Code, you've got the Texas Constitution, those are 2 documents, and the third thing is the Texas Administrative Code that gives direction to the Secretary of State. This is a certification form checklist that says what these softwares have to have on them for electronic voting. Number 16, electronic ballot image system for recounts. Printing of electronic ballot images. They had to check the box off that they could do it. Where's those records? Okay, in the Secretary of State's office. Did the vendor say we can do it and the Secretary of State just trusted them? Or is there a document to show it? Someone check the box. Are these vendors in breach of contract with the state of Texas? Because they're supposed to be able to do it. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think they have ballot images and just stonewall you and wouldn't produce them? Or do you think they've rigged it so that they don't even keep ballot images?
I'll tell you what. I think for fear of being in a breach of contract with the state, they can do it, Kathy. I've been a vendor, and you give options. I'll bet it's there, and there's a button you can push that says save it or don't save it. Otherwise, they'd be in breach of contract for 13 years. That's a lot of money. Every county, over a couple hundred, over 100 counties.
You
Yeah.
have to have someone in the elections division that knows how to run these machines and work them.
They have
You have
they
to
have
have
panels.
knowledgeable.
Yes, they have panels of certifiers that are software people. And I'm telling you, this is a checklist here. Where is it?
Galveston County doesn't.
No. But in the Secretary of State's office,
Oh,
they do.
okay.
They hire experts, software experts, on these panels to certify the
But do they go
equipment.
to the counties and certify what the county's doing?
No, this is certified at the state level, and then they roll it out to the counties.
They certify what? The technology?
The software, the equipment, the
software.
software, hardware, and the software.
Who's on that panel?
But you
Yeah.
have to have people in county who knows how to do it.
Yeah, because where the action is occurring is at each county
County.
clerk's.
You got
county
it.
clerk's
Right.
office.
That's right. But I'm saying the software's supposed to keep it, so I think it's on there somewhere. And if they had to produce it, we would have won that election. Okay?
And you don't have a manual or anything that says, here's how you can set it up so that you capture the ballot images.
Are you a lawyer?
I'm both an IT guy and a lawyer.
You're wonderful, because we said that to our judge in the hearing. We said, Judge, in discovery, we want the manuals to this equipment that has this ballot image, shows you the image of the ballot when you vote, right? We want the manual to that equipment. And the county told us, we don't have manuals.
There aren't any. I can tell you that.
And I'll tell you what, there are. There are.
Well, they don't.
They don't, you guys don't ask for them because you don't want to,
Well,
yeah.
every time Galveston County needed anything, we had to call Hart and had a rep come out and had to wait, and everybody just sat there waiting,
Yeah.
however many days it was.
They have the manuals, but they didn't,
There aren't any at the county level.
they don't have them in county. But the county could go ask, right? The county has a contract with Hart. Hart's contract, which we got a copy at Discovery, said the manuals are part of the contract. So they could have gotten them, okay?
But the manuals are probably PDF, just an email.
That's right. And I'll bet it could talk about how to load a ballot image, right? But supposedly they don't have the manuals. Millions of dollars of equipment and no manuals. What we told them in the courtroom was, well, if you had the manuals, maybe you could print a ballot image. Yeah, okay. Alrighty, so there is a statute that talks about modification of the ballot form for certain voting systems. And it says that the Secretary of State can prescribe the form, it says may, prescribe the form and content of a ballot for electronic voting system, including electronic voting or on a DRE, to conform to the formatting requirements of the system. So the Secretary of State says, I can call that cast vote record a ballot because of this statute. And we say no, because the system can format it. You can only do that if it can't. We see it when we vote. It can format it, so you're not telling the truth, Secretary of State. It can format it. Okay? So this is a subtlety, and it doesn't work. And actually, this is more talking about lines and how it's laid out, not so much that you're waiving the serial number. You can't waive the serial number on a ballot, because that's the Constitution. That takes the voters of Texas to change the Constitution. Okay. All right, that's the law. So remember, 3 records, right? The tape, well, that's missing. The ballot image, that's missing. The only thing we have is what the computer said, and trust us on that. Well, we don't trust them. So I'm going to show you some data in our case. And this is very similar. Are you guys aware of the McNutt Cook
Yep.
case?
Yeah.
Where they had more ballots than names?
Yeah.
So did we, okay? So in our election, there were 18 precincts. These are the total number of ballots that were cast during early voting and the number of voters' names that were reported by the county. Because campaigns, you get the list of early voters and you don't go messing with them, you don't block walk them, you don't phone bank them, you leave them alone. So we had, every 24 hours we got a list of these voters that voted early, and we balanced those with the number of ballots that were reported at the canvas. And hallelujah, we couldn't believe this. Almost every precinct was off. There were more ballots than names. That doesn't work. I know math. Yeah, that doesn't work. More ballots than names that voted. Okay. Pardon? Yeah. Okay, so what I want to show you some statistics, and my background is science and engineering, and some statistics. So I worked in the semiconductor industry, identifying why computer chips wouldn't work, and it's kind of like archaeology on chips. You know, when a civilization dies, it can't tell you why. Well, neither can computer chips. So you have to do a lot of research to go figure out why these computer chips didn't work, and it's called data mining, a lot of statistics. So as I was looking at the data, I was thinking, gosh, I think my election was stolen. How would I steal an election if I were going to do it? And engineers, we work off of the 80-20 rule. Anybody heard the 80-20 rule?
Sure.
Yes, of course. So that came to me. And also I was in a general election and then a runoff. And so in the general election, it was November 4th, and then the runoff was December 10. And in the general, there were 8 candidates. And so I decided, this just came to me, this kind of inspiration came to me. Just look at your ratio, Laura, and your future opponent. Just look at those 2 numbers and ignore the other 6 candidates. And so I did that. These were my votes in my top 80% of where voters voted. 9 precincts where 80% of the voters voted, okay? These are the numbers that I supposedly got in that general. And this is the numbers that my opponent supposedly got in the general. And I ignored the other 6 candidates. I added myself and him, and I got my percent. We went to a runoff, and that's pretty simple. Me, my opponent, the total, and what I got, okay? And if you're going to steal an election, you don't want to do it where it's obvious to everybody and their brother. You got to do it a little smartly and kind of secretly and kind of creatively, all right? Subtly, that's a good word. So what we noticed was shocking. 3 precincts stayed exactly the same percent, and the voters changed. All the